Hi, I'm Sherri Thomas, author of The Bounce Back, which was named Best Career Book by the Indie Book Awards. And I'm here to teach you 5 things so that you can take more control in your career and you can feel like you have more options and you get to determine who you work for and work for people who value and appreciate you and get into a place where you're doing that meaningful, purposeful work that's challenging in a really good way and all of those things that make a career fun. A little bit about me. I have made 4 different career changes. I started out in my career as a disc jockey. I was one of the few women in the country to have my own morning show. And I was in television, and I've actually worked for 3 Fortune 500 companies. And through it all, I've had a really great journey. I've been blessed. I've had a really great career. But I've also had some really tough times, and I needed to figure out how to navigate through those tough times. And so because I've had 4 different reinventions of my career, I was asked a lot about how do you reinvent yourself and how do you change from industry to industry. So I wrote a book and it's called Career Smart, and it's on Amazon's top 50 list right now for personal branding books. And I recently wrote a second book, and that book is called The Bounce Back. And I was really curious about how do people get into a tough time in their career. Either they've been laid off or laid off multiple times, or they were demoted, or they had a real struggle with their manager. And I wasn't just interested in the tough spot that they were in, but I really wanted to understand, how did they bounce back? What was it that they did? How did they get their confidence to go out and do networking? And then how did they tell their story to hiring managers? And how did they interview? What did they write on their resume and things like that? So I interviewed a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of leaders and executives and professionals. And then for the book, I just narrowed it down to 13 professionals and myself. And I learned all kinds of really great strategies. And so from my own journey and from the journey of others, I teach people, I teach professionals and leaders how to change and reinvent and advance their career. I've been quoted in the Wall Street Journal 11 times. I've been in Time Magazine. I've been in Smart Money Magazine 3 times, the New York Daily Post. So I love doing this stuff. I love talking about it. I love speaking about it. I love writing about it. And so I'm going to share with you 5 tips that I've learned through my own journey or through the journey of others in the bounce back to help you take a little more control in your career and be a little more proactive instead of being reactive all the time. I think that's just the worst feeling when I get stuck in my career and I feel like there's nowhere to go. And the company basically just has all the control and all the decisions, and they tell me what to do, and they tell me where to go work and who to report for and report to, and I feel like I don't have any say. And so that was a real frustration point for me. In fact, in my career, I think the toughest time in my career was several years ago. I actually work today. I work for a Fortune 100 company. I've been there for 14 years, and I love it. Today I'm in a really great place, and I'm very grateful for that, and I feel blessed. But there was a real tough time, and I think it was my 2nd year that I had started working there. I think that the biggest mistake that I made in my career, the biggest mistake that I've made in my career, was leaving my career in the hands of someone else, like a manager or a company, thinking that my manager has my back. My manager knows I'm loyal and I'm dedicated and I'm hardworking and I'm all about results, so my manager has my back. But the fact is, I woke up one day and I was laid off. And it wasn't for anything I had done. In fact, I'd been really successful in that job. I'd been there for about 1.5 years, and I've been successful in my year-end performance reviews, and I also felt like I had a really great relationship with my manager and her manager, one of the leaders in the company. And so it was pretty devastating for me. I was totally shocked when I was told that I didn't have a job anymore. I remember my manager telling me that on a Friday, and it happened immediately on Monday. And I remember my head was just swirling, and I could not understand how you can do everything your manager asks you to do and do it well and get some good results and do it with a good attitude, and at the end of the day be laid off. I just couldn't understand how that made sense. But what happened was, and it's very common, is that department was just given a headcount number from the senior leaders. And so the senior managers then pulled out the org chart and they just put a big red X through my job role. And so when my manager told me that I was no longer needed within the company, I remember I felt just, really confused, but just angry. And I was totally scared, thinking about how do you then pay the mortgage and the car payment and all the bills? How do you do that? I mean, your head just you cannot think. You just cannot think straight. And it's just like all this noise around me. Even though the room was totally quiet, there was just all this noise in my head. It was devastating. And so it's actually a really nice company that I was in at the time, and they gave me a couple of weeks to look for another job within that company and try to get a transfer. Now, I did get a transfer, and so that's how I've been with this company for 14 years. But back when that experience was happening and my head was spinning, I started reflecting on my career, and I realized that it wasn't just that company. It had happened to me before. I'd been laid off before. And I started really reflecting on being nice wasn't really working for me in my career. At that time, if somebody wanted to hire me, I thought, oh, I'm supposed to go work for that person. Or if I had a manager that said, go lead this team, I would go lead that team. Or if they said, go be on this project, I'd go be on this project. And at the end of the day, I'd been laid off a couple times. It just wasn't working for me. And I realized that just being nice wasn't a good strategy. I kind of looked around and I thought, I wasn't really happy with my role and responsibilities at that time. And I wasn't happy with my job title. And I certainly wasn't happy with my paycheck. So I just realized that I needed to figure out how to take more control in my career. This being reactive wasn't working for me. It just wasn't a good strategy. So out of sheer frustration, I just grabbed a sheet of paper and I just wrote on it, mission statement, I am driving my own career. I am driving my own career. When I was in that state of mind, I had a couple weeks to look for a new job. I just happened to be reading a book by Jim Collins called From Good to Great. I don't know if you've heard of that book. It's been on the New York Times bestseller list for years, and it's a great book. And Jim Collins very eloquently speaks about how it's an organization's responsibility to put the right people in the right seats on the bus. And if an organization can put the right people in the right seats, then those people will be inspired and motivated and more productive, and the company will be more successful. Okay. I get that. I respect that. But I look at it from my perspective. As an employee, I want to be the one to figure out what the right seat is on the bus for me. So I asked myself when I was in that state of mind, I asked myself, am I on the right bus? And I encourage you to ask yourself, are you on the right bus? The bus, of course, being a metaphor for are you with the right company? And at that time, I didn't know. It took me about 3 days to just sit with that question and really think about it. And after 3 days, I thought, I think this is the right bus for me. I felt like I'd only been there 18 months, but I felt like there was just more opportunity out there, and I wanted to do that. Now, I continue to ask myself that question every single year. Every year I do my own development goals, and so I write them in December, and then I start working on them in January for the next year. And I always start with the question, am I on the right bus? For me, I've been on the right bus for 14 years and counting, but there have been times earlier in my career where it wasn't the right bus, and so I hopped off and I looked for another bus, and I got onto another bus. I predict there probably will be a time in my job now that I will say, no, it's not the right bus anymore. I need to go find a new one. But it's a good question. And the next question that I asked myself was, after I answered the question, am I on the right bus? And I thought, yeah, I am. Then I asked myself, am I on the right seat on the bus? At that time I didn't have a seat, so I had to go find one. But I still ask myself this question every year: am I on the right seat on the bus? Now for me, I tend to change seats on the bus. I've been in this company 14 years. I've made 4 or 5 major changes within that company. So for me, I tend to change seats every 2, 3, 4 years. I don't know, maybe I have ADD. But if you've been in the same seat for 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, whatever it is, and you're happy, that's awesome. I'm not here to say we should all change seats on the bus. I just really believe that if we're going to give a company 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, that it should bring us some kind of joy. It should bring us some kind of joy, some kind of meaning, some kind of purpose. We should be working for people who value and appreciate us. You know, if you're really giving 100% and you're making some major contributions, you should be working for someone who values and appreciates you. And I just feel like if we're not, and when I get into a situation when I'm not, for whatever reason, growing and stretching and learning, and my career is really cool and fun, then I want to be able to take control and change seats on the bus. So this journey that I've been on for the past 12, 13, 14 years about I needed to figure out how to drive my own career. I had no idea when I first started this how to do it. I just had no idea. I just knew that being reactive and going where people told me where to go all the time, it just wasn't working for me. It wasn't working for me. So some of these tips, these 5 tips that I'm going to share with you, some of them I've learned on my own, and like I said, some of these are stories out of the bounce back that I want to share with you today. So the first one is higher salary equals choices. Equals choices. So somewhere along the way, you have set your bar. You've accepted a job. You've accepted working for someone. You've accepted working at a company. And that salary was acceptable to you. And somehow you've set your bar and you've just allowed it to be there. I really believe that higher salary equals choices. So earlier in my career, I talk a lot about how I changed industries in my career, and each time I changed, I got a 10% to a 25% increase in my salary. It happened on purpose. I mean, I planned it. Earlier in my career, I was in radio, I was in television, I was having fun, and so salary just wasn't a priority to me. It wasn't a priority. I was having too much fun. I was, as a disc jockey, you know, I was going to dinner with rock stars, and I was hanging backstage at concerts, and you know, meeting Bad Company and the Black Crowes and Sting and Phil Collins. I was just having fun, so salary wasn't a priority to me. But later, as I started to get into my later 20s, then I started having conversations with friends and family members, and I started thinking, what's this thing called a 401k, and what's stock, and how do you get that? And I started really realizing that I need to make my salary a priority. It wasn't even on my radar back then. You know, I mean, people always think that you get paid a high BV salary when you're in the media, but the fact is you don't. I think maybe 5% of people get paid well, but I wasn't part of that. I was part of the 95% that didn't make a lot of money. So I started thinking about my career very seriously and started thinking about, well, if I want to make more money and have a little bit better lifestyle, then what industry should I go in? So there are industries that pay higher than other industries. And there are companies that pay higher than other companies. And there are job roles that pay higher than other job roles. So one of the things I did was I just learned. I started doing my research, and I started learning and figuring out which industries pay higher, which companies pay higher, and which job roles pay higher. When I was with the company that I am now, you know, you always hear, well, I don't know if you always hear, but I do, you know, that it's really hard to get a big bump in pay when you're inside a company. And most people, I mean, if you're an executive and a leader, you might get the 5 and 10% pay increases, but I think that most people, I was getting a 2%, 3%, 4%, whatever the yearly quota was at the time. And it wasn't very high, and I wanted to go up. And so I actually received a 32% increase inside the company where I was, simply by changing job roles. So I went from being a global marketing project manager to being a global technical project manager, and that's a big difference. So that's why I say that if you want a higher salary, it equals choices. Or if you want more freedom in your career, or if you want more stability in your career, it all comes down to the choices that you make and the choices that have been acceptable up until now and where your bar is. Number 2 is, if you want more choices, then you need to have strong relationships. Studies have come out and they've been really pretty consistent, and they say that 80% of jobs are going to job applicants who have a referral within the organization. So that means somebody is inside that organization saying, hey, we should hire Tom, or we should hire Tina. Someone is in there to put their stamp of approval on you. That means it's crazy how important networking is. And I don't like the term networking. I was always really bad at networking. I didn't know how to network. I would go to business events and conferences, and people would give me their business cards. I didn't know what to do with the business cards. I'd come home, I'd put them on the desk, and after a week or two, then I'd put them in a drawer, and then at the end of the year, I had this drawer stuffed with business cards. I didn't know how to network, and I thought to myself, I really need to figure this out. And so that was one of the really great tipping points in my career. It allows you, when you have really strong relationships, it allows you to leverage those relationships. When you know how to do that, you can then go to your network and you can ask them for job leads and referrals and recommendations, things like that. One of the stories out of the Bounce book was Michelle Glenn, and she was working in IT and in healthcare, and she was a director in IT, and she was laid off. And it was scary for her because she was a single mom with two girls. And so she talked about her story, about how she hit this really low point in her career, and she talked about how she bounced back. And she did bounce back, and she's in a thriving career now where she's really happy. But as she looked back on that journey of, I think it was 8 months or 10 months that it took for her to get a job, she said that one of the key things that she learned is that if she had been able to build a strong network and leverage that network to help her get a job, she's sure that it would have cut her time in half of being able to get a new job. There's another story in the Bounce Back about Rich Dubeck, and he's a Emmy award-winning TV news reporter. And so clearly highly respected in the industry, highly respected at his TV station, and he'd been there for about 15 years. So he was an expert TV news reporter. And he had a struggle with his manager. He just wanted to be able to fill in for the news anchor. So when you watch the 10 o'clock news or the 11 o'clock news, and you see those anchors at the desk, he just wanted the opportunity to fill in. So if somebody went on vacation, or if they got sick or something like that, he wanted an opportunity to fill in. And his manager said no, just would not give him that opportunity. And he talks about how he just felt stuck in his career. He didn't know what to do. He had spent his entire career in one industry and with one company, and he just didn't know what to do. And so one of the ways that he bounced back was he started talking to people, and he started talking to different reporters, and he started talking to news anchors, and he started talking to people who had left the business and what did they do out on their own after they left. And so anyway, he found a great mentor. He found someone who started their own company. And so because of that mentorship, then he eventually had the courage to leave his job and start out on his own, and now he has a thriving business where he does media coaching for company leaders. So it just all shows you that if you want more choices in your career, and if you're feeling a little bit stuck, like you don't have any opportunities, you don't have anywhere to go, I think that strong relationships is a place that you really need to focus your attention. The third tip I want to share with you today is, it's easy to go out and talk to people when you're doing great in your career. When you've had some successes and you're feeling good and your manager is giving you some kudos, and it's easy. It's very easy to go out and talk to people. But it is tough when you're in a tough spot in your career. It's tough to go out and talk to people about that. And that's why I write fear less. I don't want it to be fearless, but I just want you to fear less. I want you to let go of any insecurities. I love what a friend of mine told me. I was in a really bad time once in my career. And I had a friend who told me, who's to say that that person who said that to me has divine wisdom? And I love that. I thought that was a really great inspirational quote, and I share that with you because if you've been through some kind of dramatic experience in your career, if you've been laid off, or if your manager has told you that you just don't have what it takes to be successful, or you're not a very good employee, or if you've been demoted, anything like that, who's to say that person has divine wisdom? Who's to say that person has control over your career? Another story in the bounce back was Cindy Hoyme, and she had been working in the finance industry for about 20 years, and she'd been with one particular company for about 15 years. And she was very good at what she did, and she was laid off very abruptly, had no idea it was coming. And the scary thing about her story was that she was the main breadwinner in her family, and she had a daughter who was about ready to go off to college. So she received in 21 days 4 potential job offers. And I was so curious about this. I just asked her all kinds of questions about how she did this. But the thing that captured me was that she really was able to put that experience behind her. And she didn't have any fear. She didn't have any shame. She didn't have any embarrassment, going out to her network, which she shouldn't have. She shouldn't have. But usually when you go through a traumatic experience like that, like being laid off or demoted or anything, usually then all of a sudden insecurities creep in and you lose your confidence. I know this myself. It was a time in my career where I had been laid off, and I had only a couple weeks to find a job within the company. And this actually just happened. So in the company that I'm in, I've been in for 14 years, twice in the 14 years, I've gone through an organizational restructuring. And so twice I've been laid off. And so twice I needed to, confront, do I want to leave the company and go look for something external, or do I want to stay inside? And so, of course, I always start with that question. And the second time it happened, I did take a few days and I thought about it, and I thought, no, I am on the right bus. I want to stay here. So I needed to really look at opportunities, and I need to find a new job really fast. And things weren't happening. I heard about some opportunities, and I would go check them out. And for whatever reason, it wasn't happening. I wasn't getting rehired. And it was really a lesson to me. It was kind of a blessing, the whole thing. I do know, and I've learned the lesson that doors open. But that whole thing was actually a big lesson on doors close. Doors close. But they close for a reason. And I guess in my mind, I was always thinking that a door would close and then another door would just magically open. But that lesson that I learned is that doors close, and sometimes I need to go knock on doors. I need to go knock on doors to find the one that's going to open. So while I was laid off and completely, devastated in my mind and going through all those insecurities that you tend to go through, I was thinking about, I need to go to my network and ask for help. And just that thought would put a pit in my stomach. And I finally had to think about what's stopping me. What's that pit coming from? And it was just fear. And it was fear of, I didn't want to have to go ask for help. to me, that was just embarrassing to me. It was embarrassing to have to say, I've lost my job. And I didn't want to go to leaders in the company and say that. And so then I just realized, that's just my ego. That is just my ego and insecurities from the experience of being laid off. And I need to just set that aside. So that was a real big lesson for me. And what I did, and I'll just tell you, I know this is getting kind of tactical, but maybe this will help you. So what I did was I thought, okay, I just got to get over it. I just got to get over it. And so I grabbed my laptop and I chose about 5 or 6 people who were senior managers and leaders in the company. But I didn't choose the highest leaders. I didn't choose those that had the most influence in the company. Instead, I was drawn to those who were just kind. I was in a place where I felt like I'd been beaten up. When you're laid off, I don't know, you just feel bruised, you feel beaten up, and I was just drawn to kindness. And so I just reflected on who are the 5 or 6 people in the organization that are nice, who will be nice to me, that I can be vulnerable enough with to say, I've lost my job and I need some help. So I picked out those 5 or 6 and I wrote to each one individually and I said, hi, Tim, and whoever else. And I just said something like, my career is in trouble and I need some help. And I think I wrote, my clock is at 21 days and ticking. I was part of the organizational restructure in the such and such department. And even though these people knew about me, I wanted to make it really super easy for them to think of opportunities that may be a good fit for me. So I said, here's me in a nutshell. And I just had 3 bullet points. And my first bullet point was 3 years program managing management and leadership development. Second bullet point was 3 years program managing technical SAP projects. And then the third bullet point was 3 years project manager global marketing communications projects. And then I said, attaching my resume, please let me know if you know of any openings. And from those emails, within 2 days, I had 2 potential job offers. And within 4 days, I had 4 potential job offers. And one of those was a job that was created for me. And I took that. So that's what I mean when I talk about fearless. Anything that's happened to you, and I'm sorry it's happened to you, I feel for you, but we have to get over it. We have to just let that experience wash away and not let anybody or any company or any experience have control over our future career. You have some confidence deep down inside, and you've got to just lead with that confidence. You've got to see that vision of yourself in your next career, and you've got to let that be your guide. Okay, the next one is, I mentioned earlier that I didn't do networking very well. I didn't know how to do networking very well. And I'd go up to somebody at a networking event and say, hi, I'm Sherri. What's your name? And I just felt like the biggest dork. And I thought, surely there's got to be an easier way to network. One of the tips that I've learned is to give to your network. Give to your network. When you ask for job leads and referrals and recommendations, you're asking to receive. You're asking somebody else to give to you. And I've learned that it's so much easier if you give to them first. So I like to send out links. I like to send out links to my network, links of videos, cool videos that I think might be helpful to them or that they might be interested in. Videos or websites or press releases or white papers or anything like that. Just giving them information, letting them know that, if they have a favorite author and that author is going to be in town, letting them know, hey, your favorite author is going to be in town. Let me know if you're going to go to the event I'm thinking about going with. I'm thinking about going to that one too. Just giving them information. If they have a problem in their career that they're facing, if I can't help them, I offer to introduce them to other people in my network that may be able to help them. So help teach them something new or help point them in a direction, help give them resources, something like that. So I'm always giving now. I love this, something that happened a few years ago was I heard about a webinar. And a webinar was to interview a woman who'd written a book, and she had the book endorsed by Deepak Chopra. Deepak Chopra is this huge thought leader, and he's written like something like 65 books. I mean, he's huge. And the gist of the interview was going to be, you know, how does a regular person write a book and then get it endorsed by Deepak Chopra? So I remember at the time, I'd already written my first book. I wasn't looking for an endorsement. And I hadn't even thought of writing my second book. But the subject itself, I was just very curious about. I thought, yeah, how does somebody get an endorsement from Deepak Chopra? So I listened to the interviewer, and I thought that the interviewer did a really good job. And she basically just said, hey, how does somebody, just a regular person like you, get an endorsement from Deepak Chopra? And so the woman started telling her story. And she said that she'd always been a fan of Deepak, and she had several different books of his, and she always wanted to meet him. And she read that he was going to be speaking, not in her direct town, but in a town like an hour or two away. And so she grabbed her suitcase and started filling it with clothes, and she told her husband and kids, hey, Deepak's speaking, and I'm going to go meet him. And they kind of just looked at her and said, okay, you know, you're kind of crazy, but good luck with that. And so she went off, and she drove off, and she checked into the conference center, had a hotel, and so she went up to her room, and she got there the night before he was speaking. And she thought in her room, she thought, I wonder if he's there. I wonder if he's at the conference room now. And so she went down to the conference center, and she walked in, and he was there. And he was checking the sound system, and he was checking the lighting. And she just got her bold on, and she just walked right up to him and said, hi, Mr. Chopra, and introduced herself, and said she'd been a big fan. And he was very nice. He was very gracious and said, great, great. And she said, you know, I'm looking forward to hearing you speak tomorrow. And then she said, I know that you traveled here from India. I live nearby. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to support you while you're here. So he said, oh, okay, well, you know, no, I'm fine. And she said, okay. So she went back to her room. So the next day she came to hear him speak, and she sat not in the first row, but like the second or third row, and made eye contact with him a couple times. And afterwards she grabbed her book, and she stood in line for him to autograph it. And when she got up in line, she said, oh, that was great. I really enjoyed that. I really liked how you talked about this. And he said, oh, good. And he was signing the book, and she said that line again. She said, I know that you've traveled here from India. I live nearby. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to support you while you're here. And so he looked up at her, and he said, well, actually, I haven't had lunch yet. Is there a restaurant that you would recommend? So she said, yeah, sure. If you go outside, then you take a left. And then she said, well, you know, I was going to go there myself. I could just walk you over if you want. And he said, yeah. And so from that lunch came a friendship. And from that friendship came an endorsement for her book. I really liked that story. I really like that story a lot. That fits right in my comfort zone. Is there anything I can do to support you? You know, it's not too aggressive. It's not too assertive. So I didn't know what to do with that story. I just walked around, you know, with that story in my head for about 6 or 8 months. And then one day I was invited to be an MC at a very large conference for about 1,000 people. And the keynote speaker is Ambassador Barbara Barrett. So Ambassador Barbara Barrett, if you don't know, she was the U.S. ambassador to Finland, from the U.S. to Finland. She's a diplomat. She's an astronaut. She's phenomenal. She's just incredibly inspiring to me. And everybody in that audience was incredibly inspired. So afterwards, I, you know, thanked her and then introduced the next speaker, and then I ran off stage, and I basically, you know, ran and chased her down, and I was so inspired by her. And so I said the line, I said, please let me know if there's anything I can do to support you. And she said yes. And so she told me that in 2 days, was going to be Friday, and she said she's leaving for Turkey. And she said that there was an event going on at Thunderbird Global School of Management, which is the #1 management school in the world. And it was a graduation, and it was a program that she had fostered. And it was a program that brought over women entrepreneurs from Afghanistan for like a mini MBA, a 2-week mini MBA, to teach them about strategy and pricing and negotiation and all that. And she wouldn't be able to attend the graduation ceremony because she's going to Turkey. And so she asked if I would attend and support those women from Afghanistan. Now, being the, kind of dorky person that I am sometimes, part of my brain was thinking, well, I don't know what I'm doing on Friday, and I think I have some meetings and I've got some work to do. And then the other part of my brain finally just kicked in and said, Sherri, commit, just commit. And so I was able to say, you know what, I would be honored. I would love to do that. And so she said, great, here's my card, write to me, I'll give you the logistics and the time and all that stuff. So anyway, I did that. It was a wonderful event. I wrote to her afterwards and I said, thank you so much. It was an honor to attend. Please let me know if there's anything else I can do to support you. And so because of that, I've spoken at Thunderbird 5 times now, which is really hard for me. It's scary for me because I don't have a master's degree. So to go talk to this global school of management is, it's scary, but it's one of those things that scares me, but I know that deep down inside I should go do it. I should go do it. And I don't really know why. There's not rationale. I don't know where it's going to lead, but I just go do it. But every time I write to her, I always say, please let me know. And I say it very genuinely. I say it very genuinely. And it's led to some fantastic things. So she invited me about a year ago. She invited me to join her at her private table to honor the great Pulitzer Prize winner David McCullough at this event in Phoenix. So I took a vacation day and I went down. But I remember sitting there at her table. There were only 8 people, maybe 10. I think there were 8 people. And I mean, it was such a great honor. And so anyway, it's just developed into a really warm relationship. I get asked all the time though, what if I use that sentence and somebody asks me to do something that I can't do? I don't think I would feel obligated. If she had said, yeah, can you spend a whole day at Thunderbird with these women? I would have said something like, I'm so sorry, I'd love to, but I can't give up the whole day, but I tell you what, I could give you 2 hours. Or I would have said, I'm sorry, I can't do it on Friday, but I can do something for you. Is there anything I can do next Thursday? It's just a way to start a conversation. It's just a way to open a conversation and to let your network know that you're not there just to receive, that you really are interested in building a strong relationship. I actually use this now. I use this with, I say this to my manager. I say, is there anything I can do to support you? I say this to my manager's manager, one of the leaders at the company where I work. And I've never had anyone give me some crazy thing to do, here, yeah, go drive this project. I've never had that happen. I think that they're just really genuinely appreciative of that kind of attitude. And so I don't use it with everybody. I use it sparingly. But when I do use it, I don't have a particular intention. Like I want this particular thing to happen. I just say it, and I mean it very genuinely. So that's what I'm talking about when I say give generously. Give generously. So the 5th tip I want to share with you today is to really talk about results. I want you to talk about results. So earlier in my career, I would talk about responsibilities. I would say things like, yeah, I'm editor-in-chief of 3 newsletters. Or, yeah, I'm leading this team. Or, I'm on a team and we're helping to launch a new tool. And when I really learned the difference between talking about responsibilities and talking about results, I started getting a lot more opportunities in my career. So now an example is, I don't say I'm leading a team or we're launching a new tool. Instead, I say things like, I'm leading a team that's launching a tool on the SAP platform, and it's going to save our company $250,000 a year. That's what I mean when I talk about results. A lot of times, I think that the reason I didn't do that earlier in my career was I think I was afraid of maybe coming across a little bit arrogant. But I tell you, I coach executives, I coach leaders, I coach professionals on their career, and the executives and the leaders do this so well. And of course they do it well. It makes total sense. Of course they do it well. That's why they get promoted. That's why they become leaders and executives. So find out, what those successes are and share those successes. And my tip for you is don't just talk about your results, but really quantify those results in terms of dollars and numbers and percentages. I had a really big aha moment in my own career years ago when I decided to change from radio and television and go into corporate America. I wanted to get a higher paying job. I wanted to go into corporate America. And so I went to a career coach and I took her my resume. And so she looked at it, and on my resume I had written that part of my responsibilities were writing and producing public service announcements. And so I had written that I produced about 12 public service announcements a month. And so she asked me, she asked what my predecessor, how many PSAs a month my predecessor had done. And so I said, oh, about 2. And she said, well, do you realize that's a 500% increase? So, no, I didn't know. I hadn't really figured that out. And so she said, you need to write that on your resume. That's impressive. And so then she said, okay, so you did about 12 a month. How many is that a year? So I said, well, 144. And she said, okay, and how long were you there? And I said, well, about 4 years. And so she said, okay, do you realize that's over 500? And so we changed my resume to talk about a 500% increase, and now I did a total of more than 500 PSAs. So that's an example I wanted to share with you, and I want you to start thinking about your results and quantifying your results in terms of dollars and numbers and percentages. And then also think about what you did, what you accomplished in a month, and maybe what you accomplished in a quarter. But also think about, what did you accomplish for the year? And then what did you accomplish over over your entire career, and see what that looks like. That could be some tremendous results. So these are 5 tips that have helped me in my career, helped me gain a little bit more control, and helped me stop being so reactive and start being more proactive in my career, and help me get more, opportunities and options so that I can choose, I can make better choices on what's the right fit for me. So I hope this has been helpful for you. If it has, be sure to put a comment below. I get many comments. I read all of them, and I respond to many of them. And also, if you like this video, then be sure to sign up to get more videos, and I'll just send a video to you right there in your inbox. So again, I'm Sherri Thomas of The Bounce Back. Thanks for watching, and I hope to talk to you again soon.